Welcome to FedScoopTV. I'm Camille Tootie, FedScoop's editorial director, and I'm sitting here with GitHub's Balter. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the open source trends that you've seen in government. What are some?
Yeah, so I think originally the problem was that government wasn't sure if they could, use open source software. It's, hey, if I use WordPress, I'm going to go to jail, aren't I? So on one plane, we're seeing a transition from consuming open source software to actually producing open source software. Things like the White House We the People petitions platform, where the government's creating the software in-house and then putting it out for others to use. And then finally breaking down the barrier with collaborating with others, so that it's not just, hey, here's our software, but here's our software, please help us make it better, please contribute proposed improvements, and so that we can look at those. So going from consuming to publishing to collaborating.
What do you think are the biggest challenges when it comes to using open source in government?
The biggest challenge by far is culture, right? I always like to say that technology is the easy part. There are very few moonshot problems that we face in federal government. It's not, can we actually do this, or can we actually use this open source software? At GitHub, we like to say all the easy problems in computers have already been solved. They're already out there. It's just a matter of doing a search for them. So the problem is culture. It's thinking, can we use open source? Can we Google that problem before we go out and put that RFP and see if maybe something already exists? So breaking down barriers to be less siloed and more collaborative.
So how are organizations like GitHub pushing the envelope when it comes to open source technology?
Yeah, two projects that I really love. The first is the White House Open Data Policy, Project Open Data, where traditionally when these kind of technical-oriented policies came out, by the time they go through the traditional vetting process, they're already outdated. But the technology recommendations are already 2, 3, 5 years old. So rather than fall prey to that same problem, the White House actually put out their document as a collaborative open source document. So they invited any member of the public or a federal employee to actually contribute to proposed improvements. So it's a living collaborative document and continues to evolve as the technology evolves. The other great example is the city of Philadelphia, which wanted to publish where to get a flu shot. And so rather than just putting it out as a shapefile or something like that, actually created an open standard, put the code on GitHub, and just said, here's a link to a map. Other cities, please follow this trend. So kind of, again, breaking down technological silos and cultural silos so that it's not just reinventing the wheel each time.
What are some innovative ways that government can use open source?
Yeah, we're seeing really the use of open source in 3 ways. When you think about it, open source is just an open collaboration philosophy. It's a no-fault mentality that invites others, whether it's in your team, your organization, or the world as a whole, to submit proposed improvements. So we're seeing that obviously in open source software, things like Ruby on Rails or Linux, where people build the actual software itself. But there's no reason that same philosophy can't also be used for open data, normalizing columns or maybe converting from one format to another, and also open government itself. So here's a piece of legislation. Obviously, we're not there yet, but maybe 5 years from now, here's a piece of legislation. You submit a proposed pull request if you want to improve upon it. So open source, open data, and open government.
Looking forward, what do you think is the next frontier in open source? How does that look like?
Yeah, geeks are very particular about the way they treat their code. If so much as a semicolon is off, the entire program comes crashing to a false. So as a result, at a very granular level, it tracks who made what change when, and take that same version control, that same technology, that same ability to keep a running list of issues, and take it from open source and bring it to open data. So rather than publishing a CSV or an Excel spreadsheet on a website or uploading it to an FTP server, to put it on someplace like GitHub, where the government can then keep a running list of the known problems with that software, members of the public can submit proposed improvements, but most importantly, because you're tracking who made what change when, you can see how that data set has changed over time. So really beginning to treat data, government open data, like we treat open source software.
Ben, thanks for chatting with FedScoopTV. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.